Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results. Hi, I'm Perry Holly, a Maxwell Leadership Facilitator and Coach.
And I'm Chris Cody, Executive Vice President with Maxwell Leadership. Welcome and thank you for joining us. As we get started, I want to encourage you to go to maxwellleadership.com/podcast. If you'll click on this podcast, there you can fill out a form. And man, we would love to spend some time with your team. If you don't feel like the team dynamics are there, the culture is there, maybe there's a little bit of a lull in the leadership. That's what we love doing. Perry and an incredible team. We are on the road in organizations all the time. So fill out that form and we'll get in touch with you, and we'd love to be able to serve and help however we can. Well, today's topic is what drives you, character or emotion? So what drives you? Is it driven by character or are you driven by emotion? Immediately, Perry, when I read this title, I automatically have different people associated with different word of leaders that I've had or people that are peers or I do life with. And so I think this is real. And I think we have natural bent and we have some learned behaviors, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. John Maxwell says that successful people are willing to do things unsuccessful people will not do. They're willing to do the things that unsuccessful people will not do. He also observes that one of those things that makes a difference is the issue of being character-driven versus being driven by your emotions or the emotional side of things. So this is big. And we were just talking a minute ago before we went live about things you're learning and reading. Again, we're always trying to consume and get out in front to share with you around emotional intelligence.
Yeah, it comes up a lot in coaching. I'll ask, especially some young leaders I have, but it's not just young leaders. You actually can be a senior level leader who has just given into not managing their emotions well and demonstrate, we call it displaying versus delaying their emotions on people. And it really tears down your influence. It causes people to withdraw. It hurts engagement levels. It hurts performance levels. People are not willing to put in the extra discretionary effort because they're not too sure about how you're going to show up. And I just find that having this character approach, if I can get myself to operate character-based and not emotionally based, it's an attraction feature to most people. They're attracted to high character and they're pushed away from a lot of display of emotion. I taught a lesson on a group coaching call once that really resonated. It's an old lesson I had learned, but I had to learn it the hard way. And it was called E plus R equal O. And we probably have talked about it here before, but just real simply, it was the E is for an event. Things are going to happen during the day. People are going to say things. People are going to do things. Customers are going to say and do things. They're going to be events. You can't control those. Right. They happen. The R is either for react or respond, and that you have a choice. Will I react, which is very quick, respond, take a breath, and think about how I'd like to respond. Usually react is steeped in emotion. Response is steeped in character. And based on that R to that event, on your reaction or response to that event, will give you an outcome. And most of us are living with either outcomes we love or we hate. If you're not getting the outcomes you want from people, I ask people, you can't control the E, but you can control the R. So let's control what we can control. And I think this R is where this emotional and character-based responses come from. And John has a lot to say on this, so I thought I'd just bring it and say, and I think for listeners today, you're going to have to just evaluate yourself personally, quietly, honestly. Do I do this? My favorite word in leadership is consistency. Yeah. And people are attracted to a consistency in you. And can they trust you and your emotions and what you're going to do with that? And I think this says a lot to that.
Yeah. It is easy to allow the emotions to roll into how we're leading. I even think about some experiences I've had at different events, right? Where I allowed my emotions to get out. I'm like, then you get away from it and you're like, well, that was stupid. Like I can't believe I acted like that. My emotions got the best of me in that certain situation. And as leaders, I think the things why it's so easy for emotions to take over at times is because of the weight of the responsibility that you carry.
I agree.
You're going to have to be dealing with conflict. You're going to have to be dealing with crisis. And you wear the weight of that. You got to make tough decisions. And so all of those things and many, many other things create a fertile ground for your emotions to take over. And I think, you're bringing this to us saying, hey, it is going to happen. How do we become self-aware about it? How do we then kind of lead through that? And the way we lead through that is through the understanding EQ, continuing to learn and grow there, but also the self-awareness side of things. I was mentioning, Perry and I were just talking a minute ago, I use my morning commutes for some of my personal growth time, and I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about how they've seen leaders lead purely on feelings, and those businesses are no longer, or those teams are no longer because of. And so just a great concept that we're going to unpack here based off of John Maxwell's principles around this topic.
Well, he teaches first off that, character-driven people, so your character-driven response would do the right thing and then feel good about it. The emotional-driven response was do what feels good, which might be blowing up or spraying your emotion on people, and then do the right thing. So you lead with your feelings, or do you lead with doing the right thing and then let the feelings follow the right thing? And when I saw this first one, I go, okay, this makes a lot of sense. Why do we struggle with that?
So as a leader, it makes me think too of, do I posture myself as the fact that I want to do right or be right? And that's two different postures, similar to what you're talking about here, right? And one's easier than the other. We want to be right. But I think when you say this to me, the first thing the word that came to my mind was, are we disciplined enough to understand that we do need to do right? And the word discipline came to mind around this was because, for example, let's just take exercising. As you giggle,
Please take it.
I have done that many times, right? I get home and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I really don't feel like going out and getting some steps in or whatever it might be. And so
that's a good one.
I've got to act my way.
Yeah.
I got to be disciplined enough to act my way into feeling. And I think as leaders, we got to remember that we have to do the right thing, even though we don't feel like it at times, because that's the character side of being driven as a leader.
I think I want you to go to the second one, but as you're talking, I'm thinking that we are, leadership is influence. And if you apply, what do you think of the two of these is going to grow your influence with others more? And I recall I was a senior exec running a consulting group once, and we had an angry client, and they wanted to see the boss. So my consultant took me out to meet the senior team, and they were mad. And one person kept yelling and raising their voice and got a little belligerent toward me. And I took notes and said thank you, and then asked clarifying questions and I was being triggered. I could feel it happening, but I decided to do the right thing. Don't do what I feel. And I didn't know this then, but I was just but I was more mature. In a younger day, I would have opened a can right there. But now I'm thinking, what can I control? I can't control this idiot. I can't control what they're doing. I can't control. What can I control? Me. And so we're walking back to the car, and the consultant says, hey, I'll ask you a question. I go, sure. He goes, do you ever get mad? And I thought about this great line from Tom Hanks' movie. He goes, would it help? If it had helped, I would have gone off. But it doesn't help.
Right.
And do you think I have more influence with that client today because I maintained my composure? I did the right thing. I let the emotion that I could have demonstrated, I delayed it instead of displayed it. And I think it brought later down the road, it brought much more influence with this client that, hey, we made a mistake. I'm willing to own it. I'm not going to argue or fight or blow up about it. I'm going to manage my
do
feelings.
The right thing.
Yeah,
do the right thing. It's good. The next one John talks about for character-driven people is, are you commitment driven versus an emotional side of that is, are you convenience driven? And again, it's just building off of even the examples, both examples that we just talked about, right? Things are not going to be convenient as a leader, by the way. Your schedule, your meetings, your conversations, decisions, all that. It's not going to be, but it's got to be committed. You got to be committed and commit to that in order to be on the character side of leading.
Hey, podcast listeners. Many of you listening right now would probably love the autonomy that comes with owning your own business or becoming a coach that helps other businesses succeed. Well, we have a phenomenal strategy where you are 100% in control of your own business, earning income on your own terms, and have access to the people, tools, and resources you need to build a thriving leadership development business. When you become a Maxwell Leadership Certified team member, you join a global community of entrepreneurs led by our expert team of mentors and faculty, including John C. Maxwell. You'll also get one of the top leadership certifications in the world next to your name, giving you the boost you need to get started. Visit us online at maxwellleadership.com/join the team to find out more.
I'll go back to your exercise example. If you got home and you said, I really don't feel like, but I'm committed.
Yeah.
I made a commitment to do the exercise. It would be convenient to get a box of Cheez-Its and sit on the couch and watch the news. But no, convenience is the easy way, and it's not all necessarily the right way. And so if you are led by the commitments I've made, I'm going to keep those no matter how easy something else might be. Another one John mentions is, do you make principle-based decisions or popular-based decisions? This one got me thinking too, that as you're in the midst of things, like you said, a lot of activity going on, pressures are high, lots being expected of you. Do you know the principles and the values that you execute from, and you say, this is how we do things, this is what we should do? I often ask organizations when they're battling with how to handle a situation, sometimes it's an HR situation, I said, what do your values dictate that you do? What do your values say? We had one organization, they had the 4 C's on the wall. I said, what do the 4 C's say we should do? And I could tell they hadn't thought about it.
They said, what are the 4 C's?
Yeah, no, they didn't say that. It was really a nice poster. But what do our values say we should do? What do our core values dictate that we should be doing? And so it is a principle-based versus not just doing what feels good or popular.
Yeah, I think you are spot on with that. And what Perry's saying is, man, we've got to have a decision-making filter. You really do, right? And
it is your values.
And that is principles and your values. So what Perry's talking about right here, whether it's your personal or the organizational, that has to be your decision-making filter. Go ahead and do that, and then that'll allow you to stay on that character side of leadership. The other one that John teaches is that, hey, the character side of things is we let action control our attitude, versus an emotional side of things would be we let our attitude and how we respond control the action.
Yeah, what do you think about that? It's so easy to say, and especially if I'm reacting, go back to E plus R equal O, I'm going to react, not respond. I'm going to make a quick decision. My attitude and how it's personally affecting me is going to determine the action that I take, and versus controlling that, choosing the positive aspect of that, and making the right action from
I
that.
also think we talk a lot about curiosity here.
Mm-hmm.
I think as leaders and individual contributors, I think when things happen, so action, when things happen, if we take a minute, to your point, before we respond versus reacting, and we try to get as curious, tell me more, tell me a little about here, what was the da-da-da, and you really are seeking to understand, I think that can get you into a posture of saying, okay, here was the action, I'm going to be curious, and then now here's my attitude towards whatever it might be, versus, and we're all guilty of this, right? Versus like, bam, here we are. Here's my attitude because of that action happened, and I'm not happy about it, or I'm excited about it, whatever the emotion might be. And I love you said just a minute ago about consistency. All throughout this lesson, I think really the underlying theme of what we're talking about is the consistency of leaders. And you and I have worked with a lot of organizations and seen a lot of different leaders, and there's not very much consistency out there in their emotions.
Yeah, no, other things are driving those behaviors. I'm thinking so much to be said about the difference between a react and a respond is that there's a gap, and I always I usually have a picture of it when I do a PowerPoint about this, that I'm in London and you're taking the subway, the tube, and they've etched into the concrete right where the doors open, and it says, mind the gap. And because the train often doesn't match up with the platform, and there can be a gap, and you can hurt yourself, so they're trying to alert you to mind the gap. I took a picture of this, and I had it on my wall for years, really had it really framed nice, but as a great reminder to say, things are going to happen, events are going to happen, and the difference between a react and a respond is the gap, the amount of time between what happened and your next words. And it is that breath, that pause, that mind the gap. And so for me, I always think about, am I minding the gap? To get the outcome I want, I need it to be a response, and I need to be character driven, not emotionally driven for that. This one I highlighted for me was that John says, if you're character driven, person, you ask, what are my responsibilities? If you're an emotionally driven person, you ask, what are my rights? We talk so much about this at level one. A level one leader, you have a title, you're the boss, you have rights. You have the right to tell me what to do, you have rights to boss people, you have the right to have your way, those types of things. But we've also agreed that that's no way to lead. What are my responsibilities? People. And motivating people, inspiring people, driving people toward a consistent goal together. There's lots of things that responsibilities fall, but if I'm triggered, if I'm emotionally pulled into something, I tend to go back to my rights.
And what it makes me think about is all the work that you've done, and we've talked about here about servant leadership, right? Is, man, we've got to put others as a leader. That's our responsibility. We got to put others above ourselves, and personal rights should never, as a leader, overshadow the fundamental obligation that you have to that team, to that family, to that organization, of what that looks like. And if you do that, and if you model that, it's going to set the right tone of the type of character. It's going to build a culture of accountability and service inside your organization. The next one is character-driven leaders or people. They continue when the problems arise. Emotional driven people, man, they'll quit. They'll quit when problems arise. There's no resilience. Talk a little bit about this one, your thoughts on it.
Well, status quo is, if everything was fine, we don't need you, leader.
Right, that's right.
The team can handle it on your own. So your job as a leader is to create more leaders and lead change. And all change is going to cause conflict at some level, and there are going to be problems. The old adage that behind this mountain are more mountains. It's just going to be always challenging. So a character-driven leader just understands exactly what I just said. That behind this mountain, more mountains. We've got to find a way. We're going to solve the problem. If you become overwhelmed and you're emotionally overwhelmed with the mounting challenges of the job, I think emotional intelligence, EQ, is the answer to this. That can I get to take control of the things I control, get people involved, we solve the problem, we have a team, it's not all on me. Sometimes I think as leaders it's all on me. It's not, if I'm a good leader, I got the team, we're all thinking, we're all moving, we're all acting. And so drawing people into this, we don't quit when problems arise, that's when we shine. That's why you're here, is to overcome the problems, take us to the next level.
I know some leaders that literally define leadership as solving problems. Like that's it. I am here to solve problems, whether it's for the team, for the organization, whatever it is. Like, I'm a problem solver.
There's no problem. We're fine. The team will handle it without you. We don't need you. Just a couple more, but John, they're easy. But again, why are they on here? Is that they're hard to do. But character-driven people are just steady at what they do. But emotionally driven people can be moody. I think it goes back to the attitude statement and how you show up, and that you're feeling the weight. And people do what people see. They're watching you. And John talks about the mirror principle and what they see. And I call it AIAO, attitude in, attitude out. What you bring, you're going to get out from others. So
it reminds me of a story from one of our organizations that we work with. And I've shared this, but it's probably been a while ago, where the most influential individual on the C-suite floor is the executive assistant to one of the vice presidents. Because she has two different colored coffee mugs. You're right. This is a true story. And so depending on the mood that executive walks in with, his team knows whether or not to go in and talk to him like that. And so to your point, that is an emotional driven leader. The next one is character driven people really truly are leaders. That's what we're talking about here today, where emotional driven leaders at the core of who they are tend to be the followers.
Right.
And I think we can all look back and see examples of what that looks like. And so Perry and I just went through this list and kind of quickly tried to give you some of these simple kind of one-liners that John has laid out for years and that we've seen lived out on both sides. Both of us personally have experienced both sides. We also coach and train and consult with people and see it on different sides. We probably have family members that are on both sides.
I wouldn't go use any names. No?
Yeah, we're not using any names. But before I let you wrap up, let me give a couple closing thoughts around this. Character provides a moral compass and foundation for our decision making. We talked about what is that decision making filter for you. Perry talked a lot about what are the values, what are the principles that we're gonna do that. Where emotions can kind of lead on unwise choices, really rash, right? Like we have been a part of groups where we're like, hey, let's go here. Or all of a sudden we're going here on a flight somewhere, and 3 hours before somebody's like, I just bought us tickets, we're going there. We know people like that, right? And they emotions can lead to that. It's not a bad thing, and at times you do need some of that. But man, you got to have a decision-making filter that you fall back as you're leading organizations. And emotions are extremely important. What I don't want you to hear us say is that being an emotional leader is a bad thing. It's not. It is not at all. But I think that when you really want to build a foundation, I think that you've got to have a lot of these character traits for the long haul, the sustainable part of leadership, because the emotions can be unreliable due to what's going on critical decisions you have to make, actions that are required of a leader. And so as you think about this list that we just shared with you and you download the learner guide, I'd encourage you just to kind of divide that paper right in half and begin to self-assess and go through and say, where am I at on this? And then we haven't challenged you in a long time to do this. If you're up for it, go to some of your team and say, hey,
how am I doing with this?
Yeah, I tell you what, here's a simple, if you're watching on YouTube, right here, if you're not, I'm holding up a sheet of paper, draw that line down there and just be like, circle which side of the chart I'm on. And under my leadership, what does it look like to be on the other side? And then really have a good conversation around that.
I love it. Well, the bottom line to everything we talk about here is developing your influence as a leader. And I guarantee you, if you're leading from the emotional side, your influence could be lacking or struggling in some areas. And if you lead from character, you'll almost always be drawing people toward you and developing your influence at higher and higher levels. Just Chris reminded you earlier, if you'd like to get that learner guide, learn more about our offerings, see the other of our podcast offerings, do all that at maxwellleadership.com/podcast. You can also leave us a comment or a question there. We love hearing from you. Very grateful you'd spend this time with us today. That's all from the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast.
Are you ready to elevate your leadership to new heights? Join the movement towards High Road Leadership with John C. Maxwell's latest book. In High Road Leadership, John explores the power of valuing all people, doing the right things for the right reasons, and placing others above personal agendas. Learn how to inspire positive change and bring people together in a world that divides. Order now and receive exclusive bonuses, including a keynote on High Road Leadership by John Maxwell himself, and a sneak peek into 3 impactful chapters. Take the first step towards becoming a High Road leader. Visit highroadleadershipbook.com to order your copy today.